Welcome back to another episode of Your Dose, where we speak to individuals with lived mental health experiences to help people feel less alone and more connected. Today we are speaking with Jodie about her experience with agoraphobia. Now, I do want to make sure that I let the listeners know that there is a trigger warning of mention of suicidal ideation and suicidal attempts in this podcast. So please, if you are listening and struggle with this and this could trigger you, I would recommend maybe not listening to this or listening to this at a time when you are in a better mental health space. So Jodie started having panic attacks as young as year 6 during the time when school trips started happening, and she felt absolute terror at the idea of going. This then progressed gradually from there, and the anxiety got worse and worse until Jodie was sleeping on her mum's bedroom floor at the age of 14 and literally couldn't leave her mum's side. Jodie was aware that she was struggling with agoraphobia after researching on the internet and went to seek support from mental health professionals on multiple occasions, but was consistently told she had generalized anxiety disorder. After years of being ignored by the health system and not receiving the support that she desperately needed, Jodie tried to commit suicide. Luckily, Jodie survived, and she is here to tell her story today on the podcast. Thank you so much for listening today, guys. I hope you enjoy the show, and please, if you are struggling with any of the issues that we speak about in today's episode, remember to seek professional support. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Your Dose. Today we are speaking to Jodie. Hi Jodie.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
And where are you based? Because as always it's my first question and it sounds like you're based in England somewhere.
I am. I'm just outside of Manchester.
Ah, northerner. I love that.
Yeah.
You always lived in Manchester.
Pretty much, yeah.
And are you with parents? You live at home? What's your living situation?
And no, I currently live with my girlfriend.
Oh, nice. And how old are you?
I'm 21. I always forget that. I still think
21.
I'm 20.
So did you move out of home? That's quite young to be. Well, I guess not really. I'm thinking of that being young, but it's not because I was at university at that time. Have you been to uni or college or anything? Or
I'm in university at the minute.
And what are you studying?
Psychology.
I love that. I also studied psychology. Are you at Manchester University?
No, I do a from home university. It's called the Open University.
Oh, cool. And when did you start doing that?
So I'm just about to go into my second year this month.
And how are you finding university from home?
I mean, I don't know much different, so it's, it's easier to work it around your schedule. I work as well, so it just all makes it a lot easier.
So do you do the parts, so it's like a part-time, or is it a full-time or part-time course?
It's a full-time course.
Ah, so you do that in on your days off from work and stuff?
Yeah, or in the evening. So when I finish work, I'll just switch straight onto uni and go from there.
And what's your normal job?
My normal job, I work in customer service and complaints.
So is that also over the phone as well?
That's just emails. Luckily, I don't have to speak to anyone over the phone.
That's really helpful. I can't imagine speaking to people over the phone having complaints all day.
No.
Okay. Well, thank you for giving a little bit more of an insight into who you are, what you do, where you're from. It's always helpful. But obviously what we're really here for today is to learn a little bit more about your mental health experience. For the listeners, Jodie actually reached out to me and had mentioned that she'd listened to some of the podcasts and she really wanted to share her story. So still so grateful for that, and I appreciate Jodie being so brave to come on here and talk about her experience. So I think the best question really would be, what has your mental health journey been so far?
Okay, so I mean, for anyone who obviously doesn't know, I have very severe agoraphobia, which is, I guess by Google definition, it's a fear of like being somewhere where an escape isn't possible or like easily accessible, but it's very different for everyone. And a lot of people and myself eventually end up housebound with it. So I've been housebound now for 3 years.
Wow.
And I think it all started from a very, very young age. I think the first memory I have of what I now know to be a panic attack, but it was in year 6. So for anyone not from the UK, I think you're about 10. And everyone was going on this big school trip. I remember my teachers handing out the letters, and it was the first overnight school trip. And I felt absolute terror. Like, all of my friends were excited, and I just started crying. And my teacher pulled me to one side, and I started begging her, because at that age I didn't know that it was an option to go.
Yeah.
I was like begging her. I was like, no, I can't go, like, please. And I just remember I was hysterical. So I never ended up going. And that weekend that all of my friends went and I didn't, I had to sleep on my mum's bedroom floor for the first time. And I just could not leave her side. I was so terrified, as if the teachers were going to come back from the trip and take me.
Wow.
And it really just gradually progressed from there. I went into high school, and for the first few years I was fine. I just couldn't stay out, and I had like a lot of anxiety, just generalized anxiety. But I had started sleeping on my mum's bedroom floor, which in high school is definitely not considered a normal thing to still be doing. And I think I reached the age of like 14 and I was still sleeping on my mum's bedroom floor. And eventually the teachers found out and they was like, okay, what is going on? And I just explained to them, like, I'm too scared. Like, I don't know why. I had no idea what was happening. I was feeling so, at that time, it was really like a lot of just thoughts of like, why? Like, I know none of my friends do this. I can't talk to my friends about this because you get kind of ridiculed a lot in high school for anything. So
yeah.
I feel like kind of coming out that you're sleeping on your mum's bedroom floor just wasn't something I could speak to anyone about. And then my teachers ended up finding out. I believe it was my mum that actually told them so that they would speak to me. I found out quite a few years later. And they advised that I went to the doctors, and they said this is sounding like it's a bit more than just, your general anxiety that kids get. So we did. And I was told that all kids get it. All kids in high school get anxiety and I'll be fine. And I was turned away from that doctor's.
Turned away. How did that make you feel? What age were you at that point when you got turned away?
I was 14 at this point.
So obviously it took the courage for you to actually speak about this openly to teachers, which not really the people that you want to be talking about this stuff to. And then you then have the courage to then go to the doctors, but presumably with your mum, explain it, and then you literally got turned away?
Yeah.
Can you remember what you felt like at that time?
I felt so awful. I remember going home in the car and like trying not to cry because my mum was also in the car, and I just didn't want to make it seem like it was a big deal because everybody around me was treating it like it's not a big deal. But I knew that I was going to bed every night absolutely terrified, and I have no idea what of. It wasn't like normal kid fears. It wasn't like, oh, someone's gonna break in or something's gonna happen. Like,
Yeah, because I used to have a lot. It's interesting because I actually slept with my parents until I was year 7, so that's 12.
yeah,
And mine was very much around the house getting set on fire or somebody coming or somebody burgling the house. So there was an actual reason behind why
yeah.
I was feeling those fears. Well, I mean, it's still not normal, but I was an anxious child. But you're saying that there was actually not really anything that you were scared of.
Not that I knew about at the time. I always just thought that I don't know, like I just I
You wanted
just
to feel
needed to
safe
be,
when your mum
yeah.
felt like safety. Yeah.
I just felt really, really unsafe, like almost just in my own skin. I just felt unsafe if somebody wasn't there.
Yeah.
Um, and it went on from there to get progressively worse really fast. I could no longer go to certain places with my friends. I was feeling this same terror, but over places that I've already been before and like during the day. And I stopped being able to go like into Manchester, which for me is about 30 minutes away. I stopped being able to go there, and I couldn't explain it to my friends. I always had to tell them I was ill. I used like every excuse in the book to avoid telling them what was happening because I didn't know, and nobody was explaining it to me. I went to the doctors again, but a different doctors this time. We changed doctors because I was so scared that they weren't going to listen to me. And at this point, I knew something is not right. Like, I want to go out with my friends.
Yeah.
I don't know why I can't, because I could a few months ago. And when I went to the doctors again, I think I was around 15 at this point, they said that it was exam stress, and again, everybody gets it, and I was going to be fine. And I was turned away again.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
And at that point, I became so suicidal. I was dealing with suicidal thoughts almost every single day.
Yeah.
And it was like absolutely excruciating because I didn't want to feel like that. Like, I was such a happy child and I had so many friends. Like, I didn't struggle in high school. It wasn't one of those situations. I had so many friends and they were amazing, and I was just missing them so much. And I couldn't talk to them and no one was listening to me. And I was like, this is really just only happening to me then. Like, if the doctors are turning me away, clearly, you know, they don't believe it because this doesn't happen. And I tried Googling and I tried absolutely everything that I could, and there was just nothing. It just kept telling me anxiety. Everything that was coming up was anxiety.
Do you remember the things that you were Googling?
I was Googling stuff like, is it normal to be sleeping on your mum's floor at like this age, or like a parent's floor, or in bed with your parents? And I was going through kind of loads of links where It kind of takes you to those question pages where other people have asked things.
Yeah, like
I was scrolling through them. Yeah. A lot of them started bringing up like PTSD and stuff like that, but at this age I had no idea what that was. I was like, oh, I don't have that. I'm fine. Like I was a happy child before this happened. Like you know. So yeah. But then I started gaining well, not gaining. I had emetophobia this whole time. I didn't know.
So interesting how many people you are the fourth person on this podcast to talk about emetophobia, which, and so you had that at all this time, and
yeah.
Wow.
I had no idea.
What was it that made you aware that you had it?
I was sick. So I had actually vomited, and the terror that I had felt before it, I was I think this is what I'm afraid of. Because every time I have anxiety, I was feeling sick, and that was when the terror would kick in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when I was sick, I was like, God, this cannot happen again. And if I make sure that this can't happen again,
then I'll not feel like anxiety again.
Yeah. And I'll be okay. Like, this is it. I can cure myself. Like, I was so dead set. And I developed what I didn't know at the time was compulsions. Compulsive Googling. I had like a ritual that I had to say in my head on the way to school over and over again. And if anybody had interrupted me on the way to school, I was going to be sick that day.
What was the ritual relate? You don't have to say the ritual, but do you know? I mean, if you're comfortable enough to share the ritual, I don't know how personal it is, but or even what was it related to?
Yeah. It was like nothing like really like deep and meaningful. It literally was me saying over and over again in my head, you're not going to be sick for the whole of today, for the whole of tonight, for the whole of this morning. I had to make sure I mentioned all three, because if I said today, then I didn't specifically say this morning, meaning I could still be sick this morning.
Right, so you'd have to keep saying it. Would there be a certain amount of times?
There was never a certain amount of times. It was until I reached school, and my school was a half an hour walk. I used to take the bus, but people kept speaking to me on the bus, and it would mess up what I was saying in my head. So I started walking instead, and it was a half an hour walk, and trying not to bump into anyone so that they wouldn't interrupt what I was saying in my head, because it would ruin it and I would have anxiety for the rest of the day, and it was awful. And I thought that, I was like, this is working. This is what is getting me through my day. So this is what I need to do every day. And then it became taking paracetamol as well. I had to take 2 paracetamol every day. I had to take 2 in the morning and 2 just before bed, because I was also determined that that was going to stop me from being sick. It turned into timing, so I knew that, I mean, I don't know whether this is 100% correct, but I saw on Google that you can only be sick from a meal within 7 hours of eating that meal. After 7 hours, that food can't make you sick. And I began setting timers on my phone.
7 hours, and that must have been so. That period must have made you so anxious. In that 7 hours, you just sat there, waiting and waiting and waiting.
Yeah.
For the 7 hours to pass, and then you must have got that relief, which is like that's because that's the compulsion, isn't it? And then you get that sense of relief, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm fine. Then as soon as you eat again, you're engaging in that compulsion again. Then it's a relief, and then So how long did that go on for?
That, only completely stopped around 2 years ago. So I would have been about 19.
Wow.
So I kept that going for 4 years. Other than the mantra, that stopped after I was sick again after a school day. And I'd said that mantra in my head that day, and I really punished myself for that because I'd messed up in my head.
What, when you say punish, what would you do? Just feel really, just sit and feel really shit?
No, that was it was around the time that I had already started self-harming.
Okay.
So that's what I did in response to that, because in my head I'd messed up somewhere. I'd said that wrong somewhere, and that's what made me feel that type of terror again. And that's what's now messed up the mantra for me. I can't say the mantra again because it didn't work.
So I know that self-harm, and anybody that's listening, obviously this is a quite a difficult and very important topic, but in terms of, because self-harm can be absolutely anything. In terms of what self-harm can be, exercising, for example, it can be overeating. But what was self-harm for you? Was it engaging in quite dangerous behavior to yourself?
I don't know whether I am allowed to say specific. Is that okay?
Yeah, as long as you feel comfortable to talk about that. Yeah.
Definitely like a trigger warning to anyone who is like listening. My form of self-harm was at first it was cutting myself with a hair grip, so they were very surface.
Okay.
But then I turned to a razor blade and a carpet cutter.
And were your parents aware that your mom, whoever you were living with, aware that you were doing this?
No.
So you would do it in quite discreet places, so that when you went to school, it would be covered up, or wherever you were, no one would see that you were doing that.
I lived primarily with my mom, and she was really badly struggling with alcoholism.
Okay.
So she was quite a bad alcoholic, so she really wasn't present. So I could get away with it. It was really only when I was outside that it needed to be covered.
And how were your friends throughout all this? Obviously, you've said quite a few times that you had a really big friendship group, which is amazing, because despite what you were going through, you still managed to clearly keep friendships and not isolate yourself too much. But there is only a period of time when, obviously, when your mental health gets really bad, that you do naturally start to isolate yourself. Obviously, you're not going out, you're not seeing your friends. And when you're younger, when you're a bit older, friends understand a little bit more. Whereas I think when you're younger, it's like, oh well, Jodie never comes out, so we're not going to invite her out anymore, and all the rest of it. So, yeah, what was your experience with your friendships during this time?
During that time, because I could still go out, I kept a majority of my friends. And they were really great. They were so supportive. Like, the most of them, honestly, were very mature for their ages and my age.
Yeah.
They were really good about it. They always knew when like something was wrong, and sometimes I would have my two best friends come over if I just hurt myself, because we didn't like always have like bandages and stuff, or I couldn't go downstairs to get them because it would be a bit too obvious. So I would always message my friends and they would come around and they would help me, and they'd bring bandages and
So good.
wipes and stuff, and they were amazing.
So in terms of your agoraphobia, is it a specific place or places? Because obviously at this period of time, you're still going to school. So it's not that you're not afraid to leave the house completely, but I don't know, this is why I'm asking the question. Because agoraphobia can be where you are literally cannot leave the house. You are really afraid to, because it's all about being safe, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, the question is, where is there specific areas that you cannot go?
At that point, it was just anywhere. It became anywhere that was too far to get to a bathroom, somewhere private that I could be sick if I needed to.
Okay.
It really started to revolve around the emetophobia. So school was fine. I had to sit at the door in every class, which kind of singled me out to a little bit of high school stuff, you know, because people didn't understand. But I had to sit by the door. But it got worse when I hit 16, like 15 to 16, and I could no longer be in lesson. It just became too much. The walk to the bathroom just felt too far now. I don't know. Anxiety just decided no. Like nothing happened, but it really just decided one day no. So I had to take all of my lessons in a private room, which was called the OBC, the Onboard Centre, which is just where people go if they're ill, if they're in like isolation, maybe stuff like that. They just sit you all in a room, and I had to take all of my lessons in there.
And at that point, was anybody asking any questions? You know, why is Jodie not in class anymore? You had that, and it's like, how would you explain? Did you ever explain to people? Like, did anybody really know what was going on, or they just thought that? I mean, what do you even know what anxiety is when you're at school? I don't even think it was a really spoken about thing. And I look back at school and think how many children. There was always somebody in the class who was maybe had extra care for some reason, or had some sort of requirement on trips. And like at the time when you're young, you don't really consider you just don't know. You just think, oh yeah, it's just so and so, like they need that extra help or whatever. And I wonder how many people at school actually were struggling with similar things to what you were struggling with.
Yeah.
So were you diagnosed at that point with emetophobia, or did you just know that you had this fear of being sick?
No, I wasn't diagnosed. I think that was the only thing that I'd ever self-diagnosed myself with. Was emetophobia. Like I knew 100% that is the worst thing that could ever happen to me.
So in terms of so at school you obviously had to, and you couldn't be in lesson anymore. You couldn't, because you weren't near enough to a bathroom. What is agoraphobia like for you today? You said you've not really left the house for 3 years.
Yeah.
So is that literally you cannot leave the house, or can you leave the house and maybe go to like specific places?
No. With all mental health conditions, you have like good days and bad days.
Yeah, of course.
And on a good day, I can like make it up the street. My street's really quiet, so and a few weeks ago I made it to a little hill near my house.
Amazing.
But that's really as far as you get. my mum lives 2 streets up from me, and I can't
Will
get
she
to her
come to you
house.
though?
She does come down. She's really, really busy, so it's so hard to find time between my schedule and hers, but she does.
And your mum is aware of obviously what's going on now.
She is.
So, at what point were you diagnosed? Because obviously we spoke a bit ago about the doctors just being absolutely terrible, and you got turned away so many times. So what was that moment where they actually started to take you a bit more seriously?
I had gone to them a couple more times within the few years, and they kept turning me away. It was only actually I think I had gone at the end of year 11, so at like 16, at the end
Yeah,
of being
right,
16,
isn't it? Yeah.
and that's when they said, okay, you have generalized anxiety disorder. Here's some medication. Like you're going to be good, essentially.
And what was the medication that they gave you at that time?
They put me on propanol.
Okay.
Um,
So they
and
didn't offer any talking therapy
no,
or anything. They just gave you some pills and said, right, go away, that'll sort you out.
yeah,
So you obviously started to take the medication. How did you react to that?
I definitely wanted more of a support.
Mm,
In my head, I'd met people with generalized anxiety condition, and they weren't like me in the slightest. So I was quite confused, but I was like, okay, cool.
it's
You know,
something,
the doctor said
isn't it?
it's
Yeah.
yeah. The doctor said it. They have the information, not me. I just, it's fine. Um, so I took the medication, and that it did help. It really eased the panic attacks. It didn't stop them altogether, but it really did just take
Good.
that little bit of a edge off.
Yeah.
Um, so that was really great.
Was there any side
Um,
effects with the medication?
no, no. I was quite lucky with that one. I've tried a few other medications since where the side effects have been
Yeah.
awful, but yeah, I I work so well with propanol. I'm still on it to this day.
Amazing.
Um, so yeah, that was great. I then a few months later went back because I was starting to feel very suicidal.
Mm,
Um, my places of where I could go was getting a lot smaller, and I had started to lose a lot of friends
mm, yeah.
because they couldn't understand, and I couldn't explain it to them because
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it?
yeah,
They probably just think Jodie just keeps cancelling on plans, and
yeah,
so and you're not saying what's going on, so they just think, oh well, why are we even going to bother?
yeah.
But she's
Um, I think at this point I really couldn't go much further than my garden.
wow,
Um, and there is only so many times you can say you don't feel well.
yeah,
And at that age, everyone was kind of just going into college, they really had their own lives, and it made me feel even worse because I was like, their lives kind of revolve around me right now. And it made me feel so bad. Like, I saw them cancelling so many plans, so many like parties that they were invited to, or underage nights out
yeah.
that they were going on, to sit in my back garden.
Oh,
And I just knew that it just wasn't where any of them wanted to be. They just felt really obligated to do that. So that was really hard pill to swallow. I was like, if this keeps getting worse, I'm gonna lose them. Like, these are really the only family that I've had for a majority of my life. You know, my dad wasn't great and my mum was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Like, these people really helped me
Yeah.
get through to where I am now. Like, I really can't lose them. And when I went back to the doctors with these suicidal thoughts, they had put me through for a therapy CBT.
And how was
And
that?
it it was really too late for them to have listened. The only place that they could give me CBT, because they wasn't listening to the fact that I couldn't go out, they really weren't listening. So they booked me an in-person CBT, and I didn't actually receive the sessions until 6 months later.
6 months? Is that
Yeah.
because you were on a waiting list?
Mhm.
So bad, isn't it? The amount of, and
Yeah.
6 months is such a long time, and the decline that can happen in that 6 months, and you're suicidal. And
Yeah.
that's the scary thing, right? Because you've literally gone to the doctor saying you have suicidal thoughts. You want to die. You don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, all right, we'll put you on this 6 months waiting list.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it, and that's this worrying thing, because what could have happened in those 6 months?
Exactly. But with agoraphobia, I think the one thing I stress so bad now, to everyone, is that it is such a fast decline.
Mm,
It's so fast. Like,
yeah,
if it isn't treated right, and if you don't know what it is, it just happens so fast. Like, you can't. It gets to a point you have no control,
mm,
and it goes from you have this much freedom to you have absolutely
nothing.
nothing. And that's what happened. Um, I'd done a couple months of college.
Yeah,
I dropped out. I couldn't do it. I tried so hard, in so many like ways and ways around it, and I just couldn't. I had such a bad decline, and I couldn't do the therapy. By the point it came around, I did force myself to one session, and I just couldn't do after that. Um,
this is the CBT,
yeah,
or yeah. So that was, wow, when would you have been at college? Like 16, 17?
I think I was 17
17, okay.
when I got the therapy.
So what's life been like from 17, and how, like, has anything changed since then, in terms of, obviously you didn't have the CBT.
Yeah.
Have you had any treatment since that's been effective?
Um, I was so I guess since then it's so hard, because like, if the story doesn't go in order, it gets so complicated, because the so much kind of just went on, and it leads to the rest.
Yeah,
Um, so it was after that, I really lost all of my friends. They were growing up. They were 17, some were 18. They were legal now. They could go clubbing.
yeah,
They literally just continued having their life, and mine really stopped. So I was dealing with almost grief of losing
yeah,
every childhood friend. And the suicidal thoughts got so much worse. I had called the doctor so many times. And I'd said everything under the sun I could say to them to stress, like, this is so bad, please. Like, I need something, please. Like, I don't know what's happening to me. They put me on antidepressants. And that was it.
Sertraline or?
It was sertraline.
And how did you respond to sertraline?
Not good.
What was it? Because it's pretty mixed. I've never been on sertraline. But what was why was it a negative experience for you?
My experience with sertraline was horrendous. It made me so numb. And to somebody who is already very suicidal, not having any emotion is a very, like,
it's a dangerous place to be in, I guess. Yeah,
a very bad mix. But yeah, I had no emotion whatsoever.
So you couldn't cry or? No. Yeah, I mean it's interesting because obviously you've got one side that's like really pro sertraline and people can literally, it changes their life.
Yeah.
And then you hear about the other side of it, which is not spoken about as much, I don't think, around just not feeling anything, which I guess in some ways can be, if you're really emotional, could probably be a good thing. But like you said, if you're suicidal, and that is terrifying because you're not even thinking, there's no emotion anymore, so you're not even thinking about, well, if I do this, what might happen. It's like, I can just do this, who cares? Like, so what was it then that, how long were you on the sertraline for?
I was on sertraline until 2021.
Okay.
What
was it that made you stop? Was it just the fact that you were not feeling good on it, or?
So it had made me really numb, which is a dangerous mix with someone who's suicidal. And in 2020, so I was 18, and COVID had just hit. It had worsened my condition because now I had no choice but to give in to my fear of, never going outside. And that solidified the whole housebound situation. So I had to quit a job at the care home, which was on the same street that I lived. So it was perfect for my anxiety because that was the only place like I could go. It was still stressful, but they really needed help during COVID. So I went there, and then everything just really went downhill. Like, COVID kept me in all the time. I was used to it. I couldn't go out anymore. I realized this was the only place I was going to be safe. And again, the sertraline had made me really numb. I had lost everything that I had. I had lost my friends. I had lost certain family members. No one understood what I was going through, and nobody was trying to help me with what I was going through. And I was just very tired of trying to argue my case. Like, it had been 4 years. And no one wanted to help. So I overdosed.
Where were you when you overdosed? Were you living at home at the time with your mum?
I was, yeah.
So what happened? Did your mum find you, or?
I never hit unconsciousness. Weirdly, the overdose was like the first thing that had made me feel in a very long time. And when I had taken it, I think I got halfway through, because I had like saved up a little like box of tablets.
What was it that you were taking?
I had all of my tablets,
The
which
sertraline, all of them mixed together.
yeah, so I had sertraline, I had obviously my propranolol, which I didn't know whether you could overdose on. I was just throwing anything that I could in there.
Yeah.
And also some of my mum's medication. She never used to label her medication. They used to be in like little boxes or little jewelry drawers, and they'd just be in like the plastic
Yeah.
wrapper. So I would go in and like take one of them like kind of every day to store in my,
How many you took at one time?
I have no idea.
Wow.
It was such a
A blur.
fast process. Like I just have not that much memory of it other than once I had taken like quite a few, and like I remember there was still some in front of me, and I was sat at my makeup table and I was like, oh my God, what
What have I done?
have I done?
So what did you do
And
at that point?
I didn't feel like I could stand. And my bed was, because my room was so small, my bed was like right next to the chair that I was on. So I had lifted myself over to my bed
Mm.
and I had called my mum from, I think she was downstairs on the sofa or something. Just to clarify, my mum had been in rehab by this point, so she was new and sober.
Which is good, because obviously if she'd have been
Yes.
drunk, she might have been passed out and not been
Yes.
able to come and help you.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I'm really, really thankful that she was sober. She straight away called
Ambulance.
the yeah.
Yeah.
But we lived really close to the hospital, and I remember her asking, would it just be quicker if I brought her? Like, be honest, like how long is your ambulance gonna take? Because we lived like right next to it.
Yeah.
And she ended up taking me. She ended up taking me herself in the car.
But you don't remember that car journey, really, do you?
No, I don't remember really any of it until going home.
What did they
Everything
do
was
in the
just
hospital?
so luckily what I had taken was not I wasn't going to die.
Okay.
The effects that I were feeling with the tablets that I had also taken of my mum's
Mm.
was sleeping tablets.
So you're very
I
drowsy.
didn't I didn't know that they were sleeping tablets. So although it was a dangerous amount, I was okay. It almost just would have knocked me out for maybe a few days, or
Yeah.
just like
Been
kind of sleep
been
through it.
drowsy for a
Yeah.
little. Yeah.
Um and they ended up keeping me through. I had many people speak to me. And then they gave me the option to be sectioned because of COVID. It was an option at that point if you felt like you needed to be sectioned. And I did. I really knew that I did need to be sectioned, but also they were asking someone with agoraphobia if they wanted to be taken from their safe space and give up all control.
Mm.
So I said no. But I said I do need help. I really do need help. I am suicidal.
Yeah.
Tonight was supposed to be an overdose, like, so please, can I have any sort of help? And they was like, yeah, we'll refer you on to therapy.
Okay.
And I had waited a year before I received a call after I had called them to ask, can you chase up the referral? They had called me back and said that somebody had messed up at the hospital and the referral was never sent. So I had to go on another waiting list.
Oh my gosh.
And by the time I received the therapy from 2020, I think it was towards the end of 2021.
And what was that, CBT again?
Yeah.
And did you continue with that this time, or?
I did. So I did 6 sessions before the therapist left. And she had really opened my eyes to a few things. We didn't end up doing CBT. It was supposed to be, and then when I described to her what was going on with me, she was like, you have agoraphobia. Okay, like, it's not generalized anxiety. You have agoraphobia. And it was like the biggest weight lifted off my chest. I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Like, she explained to it what it was. She then went into compulsions and what compulsions were, and that they were a sign of OCD.
Yeah.
And there was quite a few other things. We just like continued with a talking therapy almost. And she was really great. She made me realize where all of it came from, which I had
No idea.
no idea.
Yeah, that's the thing with therapy, isn't it?
Yeah.
They really take you back to, like, obviously typically childhood, and you forget about all these things. I think the thing is as well is you never think what you've been through. You never really take a second to think about the things that you've been through and how bad it actually is. Because you're just getting on with your life, and then you look back and you think, wow, there's no wonder I've struggled with mental health. And I'm guessing obviously that was the same for you. I mean, even saying that you've grown up with a parent with alcoholism is obviously really hard for a young person to deal with. And I'm assuming that your mum is she better now?
She is. She's 5 years sober this year.
That's amazing. And she's been able to, I assume, support you
as much as she can. Yeah.
So I have a question actually about your girlfriend, because obviously, when did you meet your girlfriend?
I met her. It's so weird. I met her last April, so April of last year.
So before you met your girlfriend, obviously you spoke about this period where you'd lost all your friends, that you were suicidal and everything, and you were probably just living at home with your mum.
Mm-hmm.
Did you like rekindle those friendships after that, or did you continue to stay on spending a lot of time on your own?
I didn't rekindle them, no.
Have you rekindled them to this day?
No. Yeah. There are a few that, like, reach out to me every now and again. And they're like, hey, I've not seen you in years. And I've been able to explain to them kind of what was going on. But people have lives, and having a friend with agoraphobia really just isn't something that everybody can do. Sounds awful. And if anybody is listening with agoraphobia, definitely don't accept those friends.
That's the thing. That's how I see it. I definitely think it's the period of your life that you were in, because when I look back, my school period when I had mental health issues, I don't speak to any of the girls that I went to school with, really. I don't know if any of them would ever listen to this podcast, but I don't speak to any of the girls that I went to school with, and you know, I get it. I probably wasn't the best person to be around in that period of my life, nor do I expect them to understand. But I think for example, if it was now, my friends would get it and they'd be there for me.
Yeah.
And so it is obviously a shame that you've lost those people, but equally, obviously, with losing them, you found your girlfriend, who's probably like all of those people in one person for you. I don't know. I'm just I'm assuming that's what it's been like to find, because obviously, like, there's nothing greater than like a partner and someone who's there for you constantly, and obviously live with her as well, which is probably really helpful for you to have around.
It is.
But I'm intrigued how you met her. If you're obviously, is it dating apps, or because you're obviously not?
No. In back in lockdown, everybody was downloading an app called Yubo. I don't know if you've. It's like a live streaming app almost, kind of like TikTok lives, but like loads of people can come in and talk.
Oh, so it's like a house party.
That is exactly what it's like.
Okay, makes sense.
And you can just see everybody's lives. You can just scroll through and see everyone's lives. And I made so many friends off there, especially during lockdown, because everyone was almost experiencing the same as me. They couldn't go out.
Yeah.
So I met pretty much all of my friends on there. And then last year I was on there, and that's where I met my now girlfriend.
And previous to meeting your girlfriend, what was dating like? Because obviously you were at school, and obviously a personal question as well is obviously whether you're bisexual or lesbian. That's quite difficult at school.
Yeah.
In itself anyway, to be having those feelings, I imagine. Because people at school are just terrible.
Yeah. Dating before Hannah was fairly non-existent. Nobody really would get past like maybe 2 weeks of talking to me before they realised, oh my god, yeah, we're never going to be able to go out on dates or do this or do that. Like, people are dating for the long term. You're not dating to break up, you know? So.
And at this time, were you dating girls?
Both. In high school, I only dated boys, and then when I left and went to college, I started dating girls as well.
Yeah.
But now I am completely gay.
And was that because, sorry to ask these questions, but I think it's actually really, it's good to talk about this, because it is a really like stigmatized thing. Not as much, but people don't really talk about it.
Yeah.
And there are so many people that probably are gay or bisexual and just are too scared to speak up about it and just to take that plunge. So obviously you were dating boys through school. What was it that made you then start dating girls? Was it the fact that you'd left school and you felt more comfortable to express your sexuality?
Yeah, honestly, I went to college and so many people that I met were bisexual or they were gay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So,
you'd been feeling those things, but you just probably suppressed it.
Yeah. It just really wasn't like, there was nobody in my year that was gay. I don't think there was anybody even like the year above that was gay or anything like. I mean, there are now, but you know, even they didn't come out until after high school. So you know, I see a few of them now. I'm like, oh my god, wow.
They've been out now, and you didn't.
Yeah.
before assume it, yeah. Which is amazing, right? I think that it's definitely it's way more accepted, but I'm 27, obviously you're 21 now, but still it's still that generation when we were probably at school, obviously different times, but still it's definitely accepted more now, but only I would say just over the past like few years, and the same with mental health as well. So you obviously met your girlfriend on this app and then managed to start dating. How has your girlfriend dealt with this? I mean, amazing that obviously you've been together for like a year or whatever now, so she's just accepted it, which is incredible.
Yeah, I was so shocked. I never like in my life, because like I feel like when you date someone and you're agoraphobic, if you're housebound with it, it kind of feels like asking somebody to give up their life as well. And you know, you kind of spend pretty much your whole life wishing you could do these things, and now you're asking somebody else to give up what you would give your life for, you know? And I mean, she was in Birmingham as well, so she was not near me. But she accepted it so fast. I think I explained it to her on like the first day of meeting her on there, and she just, like, it was normal. And every day since, she just treats it like it's normal. Like, she doesn't. There's no big fuss about it. There's no.
Amazing.
So yeah, she was great, and then she eventually came down to move in with me. We both had our own like kind of problems at home, and we just wanted our own space. And we built up a really good friendship before that, so moving in early wasn't really that big of a deal. And I felt really comfortable around her with my condition as well. So yeah, it's going great.
So does your girlfriend leave the house? Are you okay with her leaving the house? Is it still a case that you want her close to you?
My anxiety does get a lot worse when she leaves the house. But it's not like, you know, it's
But you
life.
accept that she needs to leave. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. She doesn't go out too much. She's just not really a going out person. She doesn't really like, it's not the clubbing scene and kind of all of that. And obviously she did move from Birmingham, so she doesn't have many like friends up here yet. So she just doesn't go out much. She goes out with my mum. They go on dates.
Cute.
So she goes on days out with my mum and stuff like that. But yeah, that's about it.
That's so good. Obviously, like, you found your person by the sounds of it, and I think it's just incredible that you've got that, because obviously without her it would be probably really difficult, and you might be still living at home and all those sorts of things. But obviously, other than your girlfriend, who's clearly a huge support, it sounds like you're not obviously fully out of agoraphobia right now, and like, I really appreciate the fact that you've been able to come on here and speak about it. And it's important to do that with people that aren't fully recovered. Not every mental health story is going to be a success story, and I think that's really important, and people need to be made aware of that. It's not always a case that, you know, you miraculously get better and you have treatment and everything's amazing. People do live with things for a very long time. But how are you, despite still living with agoraphobia, how are you managing it now? Is it through medication? Are you having therapy?
I recently just finished. I did EMDR therapy and then a talking therapy.
What's EMDR?
It's eye movement.
Oh, okay.
Something.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. Yeah. What was that?
it's almost like hypnotherapy to like it was just like almost unassociate what had happened to you in a memory with bad, like, you know, it's almost like go with the trauma. Fortunately it didn't work for me, but I know many people that it has
quite successful.
Yeah, it has worked for massively. I do think in person it would maybe have a better chance of working.
Of course, you did it online.
Yeah. Hypnotherapy doesn't work too good over the phone.
No.
It as you can imagine, it's really just not. So that wasn't as effective, but it was still good. It was still something to try. And then I did a talking therapy, and that was really because I've really come to terms with what I have. And I'm in a support group now for people who have agoraphobia, and it's really the same with a lot of them, that when you first become housebound, you become so depressed that you're like, okay, this is the be all and end all. I like throw in the towel. I can't. You can still do life while you try and get better. Okay, like life doesn't have to just stop because this is happening to you. Like you can still focus on getting better, but there are still things that you can do. You can still have a job. You can still go to uni. There are still people out there that will be there for you. They will be your friends. Like, you know?
Right people, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like the main thing for me was finding an agoraphobia support group. There is no one that can be there for you more
than people that are going through it themselves. Yeah, absolutely.
Honestly.
And how often do you speak to this? Did you have like a WhatsApp chat or something? Or do you have like regular meetings and stuff?
So it's a WhatsApp chat, but some of them I speak to kind of outside of the chat as well. And it's amazing. Like,
and just obviously, because I don't know if anybody listens to this might potentially be suffering with agoraphobia. So, if you could give them, is there any advice you could give someone who might be wanting one of these support groups? What's the best way to go about finding one?
Honestly, TikTok. It sounds so weird. There really isn't much on Google. Agoraphobia is not spoke about enough. There really isn't anything put in place out there. But TikTok has a huge community. You could just type in agoraphobia and you will find so many accounts of people who are currently suffering or who have suffered. And 9 times out of 10, they always have a support group. There is loads of them. So yeah, I mean, if anybody out there is suffering, they can always contact me, and they're more than welcome in my support group as well.
What would be the best way for someone to contact you if they were listening now? Instagram?
Yeah, either through Instagram. I have a TikTok called Living with Agoraphobia, and my Instagram is just my name, Jodie_Mia. So either or, and they're more than welcome.
And you've been able to find people through the TikTok.
Yes.
So you started creating TikToks.
Yeah.
And have you had people message you at all from your TikToks to say that's amazing?
Honestly, it's the best feeling. It's like
it's incredible.
Really does.
You know, social media has its downfalls for sure, but I think the mental health community in the ways that, you know, I see it on TikTok, just normalizing mental health through Instagram and TikTok is just incredible. And whenever I see reels, even for things that I've struggled with, I watch them and I'm like, wow, I'm not weird. This is just complete, like everybody is going through, like, everyone is going through something, and it's probably something that you experience as well. So okay, I will try and remember to leave your TikTok and Instagram in the description of this as well, so that anybody can go and give you a follow or reach out to you if they are struggling. But it's kind of, I was going to ask you about advice for anyone struggling with agoraphobia, and I think you've kind of touched on some really interesting points there with the support group. But is there anything else, like any advice that you would give to someone if they were listening right now?
I would say don't give in as much as you feel you need to with agoraphobia. It affects you outside, it affects you inside, and it will just decide on the day where you can and can't go. And honestly, just fighting through one of those times makes it 10 times easier. Like, I promise, it sounds so stupid. You think it's so much easier to give in, and it is, but in the long run, like, honestly, just saying no on the days you feel like you can do it.
Yeah, I think that's really amazing, because it's like you said about the fact that you walk to the end of your road, and then you walk to the hill in your village or wherever you live, and that might seem so small, but in reality, that's you being able to tell yourself, I can do this. And then it might be further than the hill, and it might be to the shop, or and then over time you start to build on that, and hopefully you can get your life back as much as is possible. But I think what you're doing in terms of sharing this story is so brave and so important. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I've really loved speaking to you, and I have no doubt that there'll be lots of people listening to this who will be able to benefit from your story.
Thank you.
Well, I will remember to leave the links for everything, in terms of if you do want to reach out to Jodie after this podcast. The TikTok community sounds great as well in terms of support. So if you are listening and you are struggling, do remember to have a look on TikTok and see if you can find any relevant groups. But thank you again, Jodie, and I wish you the best of luck with university and your continued recovery as well. So much for listening to the episode today. I hope this episode has resonated with you and offered insights, comfort, and most importantly, the knowledge that you are not alone. Remember, your mental health journey is unique, just like you are. It's okay to have good days. You are strong, resilient, and capable of navigating life's challenges. If you found value in today's episode, please consider subscribing to our channel and sharing this podcast with someone who might benefit from it. And if you'd like to hear more about specific topics or have any questions, please leave a comment below. We're here to support and empower each other. Together, we can break the stigma surrounding mental health and create a more compassionate and understanding world. If you haven't already, please do check out our Facebook community group, which is a non-judgmental space for you guys to share your stories, experiences, and support each other. As we close the episode, please do remember to take a moment for some self-care, whether it's a deep breath, a walk in nature, or a simple act of kindness to yourself. Remember to nurture your mental well-being after these conversations. Thank you so much for being part of our community. I appreciate you all so, so much. And also, if you are listening and feel like you could have a story to share, please do drop me a Instagram message, email me at info@vitamindose.co, or you can also go to the website and fill in a form at www.vitamindose.co. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week.